Welcome back, everybody. This is an H piece of the puzzle here, and today we are going to part 2 of my 3-part tutorial series on how to edit your first card game gameplay video. When we last left off, we had just finished setting up a very bare bones template and had figured out how to get the card images into Premiere. So moving on today, we're going to finish up the template itself, do an intro, do an outro, and do life total and deck names. Now to start with, I'm not going to go very exactsies or nitty gritty necessarily on how you should do your intro or how you should do your outro. My intro that I use. Now, first things first, this is an old version of the file, so the intro is a little weird. Instead of having the TV zoom forward like normal, it does this. I'm not totally sure why this is. This is why I don't use After Effects project files really anymore. As you can see, there's a .aep there. If you're gonna make something in After Effects, I recommend just exporting it out of After Effects because the dynamic link server that Adobe has to use to connect the After Effects file into a Premiere file, it's a little messy, so I would just not use it. For mine, it's too long. This is 10 seconds long. An intro should really be no longer than about 8 seconds max. 10 seconds is just overstaying its welcome a bit, and I could have tightened this up if I wanted to. The important part is that the TV would be on it, but you get the logo. And for you, this should either be your handle, could be your logo, could be your image, like what you use, your profile picture even. Just something to pop up so that people know it's you. But that is only the first part of the intro. I actually made it its own sequence for workflow reasons, which we're going to get into more today. Then we get to the actual intro. As you can see here in the actual intro file, this is just the intro here, that part we just saw as a sequence. And then we get to the video itself. I'm just gonna set some basic ideas on maybe some general rules to follow when you're doing an intro for a gameplay video. So for starters, a tagline's always strong. Welcome to Mayhem CDH, where questionable decks meet questionable pilots. So I hate that recording because it's old and I never updated it, but the message is true. You can hit them with an intro text. Welcome to Mayhem CDH, where questionable decks meet questionable pilots. Keeping your intro consistent can save you time, because there's parts of this intro that I don't have to re-record every single time. This is one of them. This intro clip here can stay there the entire time, and I never have to redo it, which is terrific.
We're jamming some All Will Be One to see who the best commander of the set is.
Yeah, I don't like the sound of that. It's not my favorite video, but it is a good show of the template. So it's a set release video. So we say we're jamming the set to see who the best commander is. Best commander. For CDH, they're all not winners. Set release videos do pretty well, so if you're doing gameplay content, do not shy away from them. The algorithm loves those. So moving on, we've got another piece of audio that's reused.
With that being said, let's check out the pod.
A big tip, when you change audio settings, when you do voice recordings, be sure to update your previous things that you're using for templates, or it's going to sound really obvious. So we've given our tagline, we've said what we're doing, now we're going to check out the pod. We are about 25 seconds in, and we're already getting to what is being played. This is how people know if they're going to be interested and if they should leave or not. And usually when they see what you're playing, that's what's going to keep them hooked. For this template, I always started with the player in the bottom left corner in the intros and then made my way around the table. That also came back at the end of the outro. So we've made it to the player intro.
Evan on Vishgraz's Doom Stacks, an Abzan deck that seeks to land key stacks pieces to slow down the table and win with Infect or combo.
So for some reason, I was normalizing to -1. Don't normalize to -1. We've got our point across, and this is simple but effective. We've got player name, we've got who their commander is, and we've got the name of their deck. Also, very important, put up a picture of the commander so that whoever's watching can read it and get an idea of okay, so this is what they're going to be playing. So we just go down the list. It's pretty simple. We've got the video in the background. We've got a static image of Vishgraz up. I will also show what my effects are on everything. So for Vishgraz, if you go to the effect controls panel, this is where you can like move things around in Adobe. So for Vishgraz's picture, we've got a position of 420, 540. 540 is baseline middle on the up-down axis. He's got a scale of 70. Vishgraz's image is just off to the side a little bit and shrunk a little bit just because I liked it more like this. As for the text I have here, I use different sizes. I'll be honest, one of the things that I don't really like about Premiere is that you don't have as much control over text images. You're better off a lot of times if you want to do something slightly fancy even, just making it in a different program and then bringing it in as an image. I do that a lot, but for these, for the sake of speed, I did them in Premiere. So for this, it's a pretty simple font. We're using Consolas font, or Consolas, however you want to say it. Size 165. We're top aligned. We've got center aligned, top and center. There, we've got a spacing of 15. So this is what I don't like about Premiere text editing. When you change the spacing, it will change the spacing for everything. So if you're struggling, wondering why that's happening, you don't have a choice. This is what I don't like about it. So I found the happy medium for my text was 15. So then I've got Evan, and then I've got Vishgraz the Doom Hive, which is the same font but smaller. Then Doomstacks, which is the same font but splitting the difference at size 80. And then it's got a drop shadow as well. So if you want to make this from scratch, it's just simple text stuff. Let's turn off this line here. So I just go to the text, the type tool here, pull that up. We would want Evan, and he is on Vishgraz the Doom Hive, and it is called Doomstacks. Okay, so don't worry that it's coming off the screen. So we select all of our text. You can either do this by dragging or by hitting Control A, or I think Command A if you're on Mac. I apologize, I don't really use Macs. So we've got our text selected. Now this can be a little obnoxious because Adobe breaks this all down into graphics and video. If you want to edit the text itself, I recommend going to the text here. Okay, so this is where we change our font. We're already on Consolas, but let's say we weren't. Let's say we're on Croquette. Just to find Consolas, we just look it up. Okay, we've got top aligned. That's usually default. Center it. Okay, Evan's name, 165. Vishgraz the Doom Hive needs to be smaller. Now, that's easy. We just do that. About a 50 was working, though we could probably go bigger, to be honest. I kind of want it more like a 70. Then Doomstacks. We want this at, I recall, an 80. That's a little small almost. I think I'd rather it be 100. So we've got all that. Our spacing is at 15. We're going to keep it there. Shadow is turned on, but let's assume it wasn't. Shadow wasn't on. We would go, if you want to stroke, you just turn it on like that, and then you can adjust its size and its color. You can also adjust where it comes from. So this is the outline coming from the inside. This is the outline on purely the outside where it's starting. Generally, you want it starting on the center just so it doesn't look weird. But we're not doing stroke today. We're doing drop shadow. And for drop shadow, a lot of this is just playing around with it. So the first step is opacity, how transparent or opaque, how solid you want it to be. Generally as high as you can go for my personal taste. Angle is what direction it's coming down. It's at 155 right now. So as you can see, the line is basically telling you where the shadow is going to be. So it's coming off at that angle, just like we can see here, it's coming off at that angle. The next setting is separation. So this is how far away it gets from the text itself. So if I mess with that, the drop shadow is all the way down there. And that's fine. That's a really cool drop shadow effect if you want to show separation. But for me, I want to use this as like a pseudo outline, but I don't want a strong outline. So I'll keep it at about 12. Then next up, we have size. So this is just how big the drop shadow is. If you keep this at 0, the drop shadow is going to be as big as what it's drop shadowing. But then if you want it to be bigger, you can turn it up just like that. And suddenly, the drop shadow's gotten a lot thicker. So that's just something to keep in mind based on style. And last but not least, we have blur. This just makes it so that it's not such a hard line, makes it look shadowy. So without any blur, it looks like that. And that's actually a pretty cool look as well. This is perfectly serviceable and I like it a lot. It's a very stark effect. For me, I think I had it at about 40. And that just adds enough of a blur to make it look shadowy. instead of like more of like a straight line, straight angled. So in order to change the positioning of text, it's a little obnoxious, I will not lie, because Adobe puts things in these different boxes. We've got vector motion here. Okay, that's great, but we're already at that vector motion, so what do? So in order to actually change the position, you have to scroll down. We have the text dropdown open right here. So then we scroll down, past shadow, now we're at transform. When you're doing this, I strongly recommend changing this position to dead center. In a 1920 by 1080p, this is going to be 960 by 540. So now it's positioned, quote unquote, dead center. Now to move it, I'd rather choose vector or video motion instead. Personally, I think video is the way to go, and that's just personal preference. But it's kind of funny because the align's coming to bite us. So we actually need to change the align to align center. So if we have the align center like that, then it'll actually match. Align top is basically saying that wherever I position it, this top line will be the center. But if I align center, then the middle will be the center, which is what we want for this. So this looks about what I was working with before, honestly, with just some minor positioning changes. So you might notice that that one's a little bigger. It's because this file was before Adobe 2024, and when they updated to 2024, the legacy titler was removed, so Adobe is trying to convert it. So that's why it looks bigger. Yeah, that's how we just do the text. It's easy enough. And then to make it fade out and fade in, that's really easy too. We actually want to go over to the effects window. And once again, there's a couple different ways to do this. We can go to the effects tab itself, or if we're here on our bin line, we can click the arrows, we can go to effects, and it'll have all of the effects that we're gonna wanna use for this. Now to cross dissolve, all you have to do is go to video transitions, dissolve, cross dissolve, and there's shortcuts to put it on there automatically. And now we've got a cross dissolve there. So it cross dissolves in. Then we put one on the end. So we got that done. The image was just positioning and putting cross dissolves, so we keep moving.
Aiden on Elish Norn Mommy Stacks, a stacks deck that also seeks to land key stacks pieces, slow down the table, and win with beatdown. And now, with each pilot in their respective corner of the screen, let us begin.
So in order to do this, it's pretty easy. We just have it lined up. We make sure that we have this end of the video lined up because we've had to loop it a couple of times. It's lined up, everything's lined up. So then what we do is we just have all of this, we cut, and now this just all needs to stay together. And in this case, since we had a 10% off discount, I've also got some audio for that. So we just select all of it like that, and now it's its own thing. So now when we get to the end, so it'd be like, pretend that these parts aren't here. This is as far as my audio goes. Okay. That means that right there, we need to start getting into the ending. So in order to do that, we just pull it up like that. Pulled it up, we've got this gap here. Easy solution. Drag, throw across dissolve on the video. And then for audio, you want to go to audio transitions, crossfade, constant power, drag it there. You can make those bigger or smaller if it works better, but now we have the transition. And so that's a way to make your ending consistent each time. And let's say maybe we're not doing a Vika this week. Maybe we want to keep this as our template so we don't have to keep doing it, but we just want to switch off a Vika. Well, that's really easy, actually. So we just go to a cards bin, which is in this case this. Maybe Tanner's playing Timna this week. Select Timna, right-click the image or whatever file you want to replace. Go to replace with clip, and then hit from source mode, and it switches to Timna. Now keep in mind, you have to double-click it so that whatever image you want to replace with appears up here. This is the source monitor. This is showing, hey, this is what this is. We can double-click any card, and we can right-click, and we can hit replace with clip from source monitor, and we can change it very easily. So that's a great way to do an intro. Explain who you are, hit them with what you're going to do, show the deck list and the players. Now, before we get to the game, let's talk about outros. Okay, I'm going to level with you. This can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. Playing with Power does like a most powerful card, talks about the player who won and how they did it. Thanks their patrons, this is definitely the time to do that if you have patrons. The only thing that I recommend for intros is maybe thank your audience, always good. Mention your patrons if you have them. Leave a blank screen, just like with a background like I did here. It's just that same gassy background I've used before. Just leave that up so that when you go into YouTube, you can add your end card, put up your channel logo to click on to go to the channel, and pop up like recommended videos. All right, we've talked about intros, we've talked about outros. Now it's time to finish our template. Okay, intro done, outro done. So we're gonna go to full video, which is already up. We can take the intro, drag it in just like that. We can take the outro, drag it in there. Easy peasy. Now, instead of having all those files and all those layers on them, we just have one track for each of them. Makes things really, really easy. All right, so we're in card stack overlay. First things first, take just gameplay and put it in there because it's always going to be there. Now it'll save it for us. Second thing we need to do is we need to grab some cards. So let's go ahead and grab a card from our photos cards. Sure, Young Pyromancer can be our choice. Okay, so we put it on the timeline there. Pyromancer is a little big though. That's gonna cover most of our footage. So we go to scale. Let's change the size. 50. It's about perfect, honestly. So in terms of CDH gameplay, I would keep the card in the center. That's pretty standard. Just make your decks and life totals line up so that you can cover it with the center card. It works really well. So we've got it changed there to 50. So now we can always duplicate it. We can duplicate it so that our cards are always gonna be that size. So if we start adding more cards in, so like maybe here's like Rafiq, throw a time sieve in there. What a game. A Vexing Shusher. Sand triplets. It's like an Evan game. Now we've got all these photos in here of the cards, but they don't have the effects on them. They're still big. So what we can do is we can right click the card we have changed, Young Pyromancer, hit copy, and then we just select all of these cards, and then we right click, then we go to paste attributes. This allows you to apply different settings that you've changed, things like motion, opacity, time remapping, and any effects you might have applied to it. In this case, we want them all to be the same in terms of size, so we affect motion, because scale is a part of motion, because you can keyframe it. So motion, okay, and would you look at that? It's now the right size. They're all the right size. So that's what you want to do after you're done putting all the cards in. You always want to keep a template card around. Like you can just throw it up in a high layer here and then just turn it off so you can't see it. Just so it's there so you can use its settings later. But in this case, we do not need these cards right now, so we are going to hit the delete button on them. Okay, just gameplay is set up. Card stack overlay is set up because we've got our card option there. All right, we need to move on to life totals and decks. All right, we are in deck names and life overlay. So we are going to create the deck names, create the life, create the turns. Now, this is one of the things that the new titler does really, really well. So if you're on Adobe 2024, this has been made so much easier. We're gonna go to captions and graphics. Starting here is really easy. I'm gonna use the type tool. Let's just put it here. Why not? It's funny. The first thing we're going to set up is names of the players and their deck. So we've used the type tool, we've clicked. Let's say we've got Joe on Mystical Tutor. Joe's done for now. Now let's do another one. Say this one is Ned, and Ned is playing Timna Crom, like some sort of 2019 meta sheet. Okay, what's a fun name? Mel. And Mel is on Najila because he's got money and he's refusing to change. And last but not least, let's have Noah on Tivit because he's a meta sheep. All right, we've got our 4 here. Joe's box is a little big, so I'm actually going to redo him. I shouldn't have drawn his text box. So let's select Joe. So let's go over the Essential Graphics tab. Over here, we've got all the individual settings of all of them. Effectively, the effect controls panel like we've seen in editing. Over here, we have the Essential Graphics panel, which is why we're in Essential Graphics. All 4 of these are counted as one text file, which is exactly what we want them to be, so it doesn't clutter up anything. So one thing we can do that's really cool is select each of these individually and put them in corners where they belong. So let's start with Joe on Mystical Tutor. I'm feeling Joe should probably be up in the top left. We can just stick with Consolas. That works fine for me. Shadow's totally fine. Mystical Tutor. Mystical Tutor is at about the right size. Now we move on to Ned. Let's say we want Ned in the bottom left. Okay, that's easy enough. Just see what Joe does. Now you can just copy each of these, paste them, and change the text. That's an option too. We're just going through it manually. So Ned, this to be size 70. Tim McCrom, size 50, which lines up with Mystical Tutor. So that's totally fine. And then let's just highlight. Let's highlight everything. So let's just highlight everything and change the spacing to -10. So Ned's going to be on the bottom line. Now we're going to move on to Noah on Tivit. Just like before, we want Noah to be about a size 70. Tivit is already the perfect size. We want this to be -10 spacing. But now, Noah's supposed to be in the top right, and it's a little hard to tell with the small name, but it's not aligned the right way. So there's an easy way to fix this. We just select everything. We go down to right align text, and boom. Now the text is flying the other direction. So that works so much better for symmetry. Last but not least, let's do Mel. Mel will also be a 70. The shield is fine. Set the spacing to -10. And then we'll do the right align text. Okay, so we have all of them set up. Now we just need to move them to each side correctly. For the sake of my example, we're going to go to the pinning sides here. This actually selects what edges of the layer are going to be used for pinning. Joe's going to be in the top left, so we're going to select the top and the left. And sometimes that even changes things. So Joe's about where we want him to be here. Now we just need to leave a little bit of space. Put him at about 185. This will allow us to give space for life totals later. Now we move to Ned. So Ned's left-right placing is going to be about the same, or as the kids call it, the x-axis. So we'll just put Ned at the 185, so that he's aligned with Joe. Then we're going to scroll him down. Now Joe is top aligned at 60. So if we bottom align Ned, and also pin him to the right sides. Okay, so now it's time to move Ned. Ned's x-axis is the same, so we just need to change the first number to 185 to match Joe. Now we pin. Just like that and that, because Ned's going to go in the bottom left corner. And now our number has changed. Before it was 668, now it's -412. Because we're telling Ned that the bottom, or 0, is right here. It'll be similar for Mel. Now, Mel is going to want to be aligned here and here instead. So we want Mel at that -60. But now, Joe is 185 away. Ned is also 185 away. So now that we've got it pinned to the edge there, we need Mel to be -185, so that now Mel is on the other side like that. Last but not least, we just need to do the same thing for Noah. Noah is pinned to the top and to the right, since he'll be in the top right corner. So we need to first things first set that to 60, so he lines up with Joe. And then, we're at -185, so Noah is also going to be at -185, so that Noah is leveled with Mel. So now we've got Joe, Noah, Ned, and Mel all where they need to be. So that's perfect. We've got that templating. Next thing, we need to create life totals. Now, life totals, we don't have to be nearly as fancy in the captions and graphics. They're going to be all individual. Now this is command. We need 40 starting life total. There we go. We're going to set the size for this to about 100. That's probably totally serviceable. Then we're going to copy it 3 times. Now, you can just Control-Z, Control-V up the timeline, but another thing you can do is hold Alt and drag, and that's created 3 more. We're about to go through the exact same process, but with our life totals. We want the left to be 0, because we're at the very edge, and then we want it to line up with Joe. Now, this is the part where I'm going to say there's nothing too wrong with eyeballing, because based on the logic we've been working with, this should be lining up, 0, 60. But it's not quite there, and aligning the text differently isn't changing anything. So, once again, there's nothing too wrong with just lining it up how you want till it looks right. I'm thinking about 90 looks right, and maybe we pull it in a little bit. Let's make that 25 just so it's easy to remember. So for this next 40, have it pinned, so we'll make that 0, and then we'll actually adjust it to 25, so we have it lined up there. This is once again the part where I'm going to say that sometimes things can get a little off, so maybe we just want to line it up like that. And there's a couple different ways you can do this, some of which involves some math, but for the most part, -25 looks about right. So now we're going to move over to Mel's life total. Now again, an important thing to remember is we need to right align that, or else it's not going to line up correctly. We also want to make sure it's pinned to the right and bottom. So for this case, we're going to go -25, -25, -25, -25. It just works. And last but not least, top left, align right because it's on the right side. Then we want to go 25, 25. And this is where things get weird again. So that number wants to be 25. This number needs to be at 92 something, and negative 25. And you know, you learn something new every day, like I just did on accident. So an easier way to align these life totals here is just right click, align to video frame, align to the top. Right click, align to video frame, align to the bottom. Right click, align to video frame, align to the top, and right click, align to video frame, align to the bottom. All right, there we go. And as you can see, the numbers were in fact a little wonky. 81.9, negative 18.1. All right, and with that, we've got our life totals all set up. So now the last thing we need to do with our life totals is we just need to right click, rename, and then we need to figure out what we want to name them. So in this case, let's start with Joe's. Joe's is down here, so we're gonna rename. We're gonna call it top left. Then we're gonna move on to this one here, right click, rename, top right. Then we're gonna move on to Mel's life total here, right click, rename, bottom left. Then last but not least, Ned's, right click, rename, bottom left. This now means that as we go through, as life totals change, we can simply use the razor tool with C. Oh no, Ned got smacked by Mystical Tutor. He takes 3 damage. So now we can change that to 37, just like that. So that's a great way to do life totals. And now turns are something we can do really easily as well. We simply just use the type tool, type in 01 because that's where we're going to start. Make the font size about 40. That looks right. And then we just need to align center horizontally, align to top, and it's up there. And now we can just right click, rename, turns. And now anytime we need to update the turn, it's right there and we can change it super easily. So now we've got our overlay done. And so now that we've finished our overlay, we just need to go over to our editing. We need to go to full video, and then we need to go down to our sequences and just grab deck names and life overlay. Now that's a really small size right now, but like as an example, let me just stretch these to be more the size of a normal video. Well, let's say 6 minutes. So now we can actually drag the sequence out to match that time. Maybe we throw a cross dissolve on there, but if the files get bigger or smaller, you're gonna have to break the effect anyways when you adjust size, so you might as well keep them off for the time being. So now we've got everything there. We've got our intro template, we've got our outro template, and then we do in fact have the gameplay template in there as well. So with that, our template is all set up. So now to use that, we go to File, go to Save as Template. We'll call this Tutorial CEDH Template. Now, if we create a new project, let's call it Birds of Paradise New Top Commander. Then we put it in tutorial files, and then we go to our templates. And if we click Tutorial CDH Template, it'll now use that project we just created as a baseline. So now we hit create. If we go to our files, we've got everything there just how we want it to be. We've got our gameplay, we've got our video, we've got our overlay. Intro template is there where we left it. So this is really the power of using the template feature. Now we can just have it saved in the program without having to copy and paste things over and over and over again and running into issues with that. So with that being said, that's how we finish out our template. Those are suggestions to intros and outros in different sizes. So that's gonna wrap up this part of the tutorial. Tune in for part 3, which should be in the playlist in the description below and come out at the same time as this video, where we go into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of the how you actually edit gameplay into a usable video. I am the H piece of the puzzle, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.